Really quickly in this video, I'm going to show you my process for creating the axle. And the reason I'm going to show you this is we always have to have kind of an eye on how we might actually create our different parts. And in years past, when I asked people to design an axle, they found one online, and it was made in such a way that it would be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to actually build and put into our box assembly like this. So I'm going to just kind of go through the parts and pieces. You already know how to make every single one of the parts and pieces. I'll just kind of explain the different things I have going on. The first thing that I did was I measured the distance from one side to the other. And you can see that I've got this 5 inches along my red X. And when I'm mousing over that, you can see that there's a dotted line that shows up on my drawing. So when I've got that, I can see, okay, that's my measurement from one side to the other. It's 5 inches. That's great. Now I know the minimum or the space kind of that I need to go between. That's my axle will be at least that big. The other thing that I need to know is the diameter. So I'm clicking off into space and then clicking the circle. And the diameter right here is 0.375. And I remembered that all of my cams also had a axle size of 0.375. Largely it doesn't matter as long as you have, or I am able to provide to you a dowel of that size, you can use it. So many people in years past have used half-inch dowels, 0.5. Others have used quarter-inch dowels, 0.25, to pretty great effect. And the only thing that really matters is that those all agree. And so we can kind of sand them down, but if they pretty much all agree, it's all good. So I've got my information there, and then what I did was, I'm going to kind of go back in time here and show you this first extrusion. And this first extrusion really is just the axle. And this is actually incredibly easy to make. We already have dowels that are cylindrical like this, and all we have to do is make one cut, and we've got this part already made. So I'm trying to always be thinking about how do I make this so I can actually build it physically in about the easiest way possible. So first I create this dowel, and it's cylindrical. I know I have some stock that is cylindrical. I can make one cut, and all of a sudden I've got the correct length. The next thing I'm going to show you is actually a couple sketches and an extrusion that I've actually suppressed. And that's a way you can just kind of right click and suppress or unsuppress, and all that does is kind of hides it, I guess, but it turns that extrusion off and it disappears. That's kind of a before and after. The easiest way to actually kind of stop this from sliding, we don't want it to slide too far one way or the other, is to have a little block of wood that you glue on the end of your axle. And that's pretty simple and easy to make. We just cut a little bit of piece of wood here, glue it on, super glue, wood glue, both will work pretty easily. The other option there, I'm actually going to resuppress that, and then I'm going to show you the other option. And what I've seen is a lot of people will take kind of a larger dowel, and then they will drill the correct size hole in the middle, so 3/8 in this case. If you're going to do it this way, anytime you're drilling into a small part, it's kind of difficult to do. It's difficult to line up. It's difficult to make sure it's clamped and held in, because you definitely want to have this clamped in a way that you don't have to touch the larger dowel. You can have both hands on the drill if at all possible. So my suggestion is, if you're going to go this route, when we do actually get to building, or if we get to building, that you create and you actually cut the larger dowel even longer, even if it's 2 or 3 inches. That's okay. You know, we can buy new dowels, we can't buy new fingers. And so make it extra long, cut it or drill it, and then cut it with a lot of extra there. And so always thinking about how are we going to actually hold on to this, how are we going to actually build this thing. So all I did was create a sketch that was a circle around this circle and extruded that. But we can drill a hole into a dowel, cut it to length, and have that. The next thing that I did was I kind of looked at my other side, and this is kind of my preferred way. It's fairly simple. Again, we have a rectangle with two circles drilled into it. No big deal. Fairly easy to make. One thing that I will say is be careful. You don't want too little of space around this. I might have just a little bit more space than I really need, but if you're going to be cutting into wood, this can split fairly easily, and so you want to make sure that you've got a little bit extra around here. If you wanted to, you could actually round the corners. Those are fairly easy. You cut it and then you would sand it or file it in order to, not using power tools for that, but you could create some fillets around here if you wanted. You'd probably estimate, so I'm going to do 0.25 for the fillets, but for the most part you'd probably be estimating. I might actually make it 0.375, a little bit bigger. That's a nice size and shape. And again, you just kind of file and shape those after you cut the piece, and probably after you drill, actually. And then after I've got this little piece, again, anytime you're cutting, you want to think about, okay, having a larger piece that you can then clamp to something. It's a lot easier to do it that way. But this is fairly simple to make. 2 holes, drill it in, and then cut it to size. Then the next thing is really just, we'll probably cut it at the same time as this other one, is create a dowel. And I made this one 1.25 inches long. And the reason I did that was because I know this is 1/4 inch long here, and then I wanted an extra inch for the handle. And you can make that a little longer, you can make it a little bit shorter. Largely isn't a big deal either way. It both works. And so this is really what I would encourage you to think about, is how do you make your axle in such a way that you can make it very simply, very easily, very quickly out of numerous parts. This is the way that I've done it in the past. If you have another new creative way, let me know, and I'd be very interested to hear about that. But this is really the process here. One last thing that I did not mention: every time that I've created a new part, you can see they're all different colors here, between blue and gray of various types. And that's because every time in this part studio, I created a new part as opposed to just melding it all together. And we want all of these parts and pieces to be separate because they will be in real life. Whenever you're actually building it, they will be all different and separate. We'll glue them together to get them all together from there.